Rachel Merryman. I'm doing my paper this semester on David Garrick. He was an 18th century English theater artist who implemented lots of different innovations in acting styles, staging techniques, and other areas. And his attention to all of these different areas is why some scholars credit him as the first director. So Garrick was born on February 19th, 1717 in Hereford, England. His father was in the military, so he was expected to either follow in his father's footsteps or go into the church, but he became interested in theater at a very early age. Around age 11, he produced and starred in his own production of George Farquhar's The Recruiting Officer. And his interest in theater also distracted him from his studies several times. He would hand in scenes that he had written from plays instead of his schoolwork. So he was diverted a little bit because of family financial issues. He had to go into the wine business, which was his uncle's trade. But this brought him to London, and when he got to London, he quickly became acquainted with the two licensed theaters there, Covent Garden and Drury Lane. And having going to see so many of these shows, he started to develop his own opinions and theories about acting styles and the approach to design elements. His first foray into the professional London theater was as an actor. He played Richard III in 1741. And with his stage debut, he also debuted his realistic approach to acting. Before Garrick, the actors had presented a very histrionic, over-the-top, and caricatured style of acting, but Garrick delved deeper into the psychology of a character and put an emphasis on feeling the part. He was an incredibly versatile actor, and many audience members at the time remarked on how expressive his facial expressions were and how they could turn on a dime. So this interest that he had in realistic acting also spread to other areas of the theater, and he was eventually hired as a resident actor at the Drury Lane Theater, and in 1747 he became the manager and part owner. So from there he was able to start a new dialogue about theater's theories and practices, and one of his main concerns was raising theater's level of prestige among the arts to the same level as like sculpture and painting. So his biggest challenge in that was convincing the audience that his innovations were necessary, since so much of theater's success depends on audience satisfaction. And one of the first changes he made was taking the audience members off the stage. Beforehand, audience members could sit on the stage with mostly nobility as a way for them to be seen, and they would wave to people they knew in the crowd, and it was very disruptive to both the actors and the other audience members. So Garrick decided that had to go, so he got rid of that right quick. And with them gone, he could focus on more realism on the stage. So his first innovation was in lighting. He got rid of the chandeliers that would hang overhead, which would drip wax on everybody, and that was annoying and hot. So he put candles in the side wings, which now allowed the lights to be dimmed by turning them away from the stage, which meant greater realism in lighting, moods, and effects. And it also allowed more of the stage to be lit, so the actors could use more of the stage in their performances. In terms of costumes, he did try to bring more realism to costumes, but he was not as successful. At the time, actors provided their own costumes, and it was a way for them to show off fashion styles and new trends and everything, so they didn't really support that as much. But when he played Othello once, and he came appropriately dressed in Venetian garb and a turban and made up in blackface, but he was mocked by several people in the audience, so that didn't go over too well. But his greatest concern in costumes was that the type of character could be easily recognized by their costume. So in terms of scenic elements, his greatest contribution was not by him himself, but he hired an Alsatian designer, Philippe Jacques de Loutherbourg, as the scenic and lighting designer for Drury Lane. And though de Loutherbourg was not English, he is often acknowledged as the most influential designer of 18th century English theater. And during his time at Drury Lane, scenery moved away from the stock scenery, just the city set or the pastoral set, into more specific and realistic and spectacular designs that fit the Romantic time period. So as manager of the Drury Lane Theater, Garrick also introduced several new practices in terms of rehearsals. He increased both the number and the nature of these rehearsals. Beforehand, even for new plays, There would be very few rehearsals. It was mainly just to get actors acquainted with their blocking, and even then the actors would find some excuse not to show up. But Garrick expected more from his actors. He expected them to show up, be prepared with their lines memorized, and ready to act, not just recite their lines. And for new plays, he had between 3 and 8 weeks of rehearsals, which is a good standard even for now, but unheard of back then. And this also helped to increase the prestige and the integrity of the discipline of theater. And through his direction of all these actors and his demanding practices, he influenced actors of his generation, which then carried it on into modern theater. So the very fact that Garrick was interested in all these different areas and oversaw all of them demonstrates that his thoughts were of the bigger picture of theater, and his relentless dedication to truth and realism guided us into the realization of modern theater. Two of the biggest names in theater history, Konstantin Stanislavski, who championed truth in acting and is called the father of modern acting, and Edward Gordon Craig, whose big emphasis was on an artistic director to oversee and unify all the elements of a production, were both influenced by Garrick and used the techniques that he had initiated. So, it's easy to see that Garrick's pursuit of realism and his dedication to the integrity of the art was a major marker on the road to modern theater. Thank you.